Hi everybody, and welcome to the first video on the Canon EOS Rebel G camera. I have it outfitted here with the kit 35 to 80mm lens that came with this camera. The Canon EOS Rebel G is an interchangeable lens SLR. It uses Canon's EOS system. That's their autofocus lens mount, the bayonet mount, which replaced the CF breech mount system. It has an evaluative metering system, shutter speeds of 30 seconds to 1/2000th of a second. The viewfinder's magnification is, frankly, the lowest I've ever seen at 0.7x, and the viewfinder frame coverage is also the lowest I've ever seen at 90%. The viewing screen is a solid matte with a metering ring and 3 autofocus point marks. We'll see what those look like in the second video. The flash sync speed is 1/90th of a second, and one of the incredible things about this camera is that it weighs basically nothing. With no battery and no lens, it weighs 13 something ounces. With the batteries, it weighs 14. But it packs a ton of features into that body. The entire camera is plastic, but there was a few minor metal components on it, like the strap lugs. But basically, the camera's plastic. But I'll tell you, the functionality is really, really great. It's just got a lot that it can do. The target market for the EOS G, now the EOS G, this one should be said, in outside the US and Japan, it was called the 500N. In Japan, it was called the new KISS. And in America, it's called the G. And it replaced the 500 or the KISS in Japan. And it is the most basic camera in the EOS line of its time. It was subsequently replaced by the Rebel 2000, which was the entry-level camera then, starting in 1999. It was produced by Canon from 1996 until 1999 in Taiwan, and it was concurrent with the Elan 2, EOS IX, and EOS 3 cameras. Now, if you have your instruction manuals, grab them, and we're going to go from the top to the front, as we do in these, and look at what the different buttons and dials do, and then talk a little bit about how to use them. We'll do a little bit more in depth in the second video, but for this we're going to get oriented to the camera's layout. Okay, so here's the top of the Canon EOS Rebel G. Looking at the features, you've got a strap lug here and here. Then over on the left we've got the mode dial, and we'll talk about this a little bit more detail in a little bit, but basically L is for lock. That's the equivalent of off. The batteries, if you have film in this, the batteries never stop running. It always displays how many shots are left on the film. So just having it in lock is not enough to keep the batteries from being drained. The green box is is automatic mode, full auto. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 symbols here represent portrait, landscape, close-up, sports, and night photography. They are the programmed image control modes. Collectively, they're called the PIC modes. P is for program, and there are 5 additional features with functions within that. TV is shutter priority. AV is aperture priority. M is manual. A is auto depth. ISO is for changing the ISO to override what the DX is reading, or if you're using cartridges that don't have a DX code on them. And then this last one is part of the manual rewind function. Next we have the film plane indicator right here. Oh, and you've got the little indicator here that tells you which mode you're selected. Right now it's on lock. Then the film plane indicator, which tells you where the film is at. Then the hot shoe is right here. And there's a flash button on the side here, but the flash pops up automatically when it's needed, and it's right here. What I'm going to do is turn the camera to manual and hit the flash button, and you can see that the flash is right there, and it pops up. and it's bright. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. Anyway, so you've got the pop-up flash as well. You've also got here this button, and we'll look in this later at when we look at how the LCD screen works, we'll look at this, but this is your AF point selector. So you can select it to pick the best of each of there are 3 autofocus points in this camera. So you can tell the camera to pick 1, 2, or 3, or all 3 of them. And if you tell it to pick all 3 of them, it will pick whichever one it thinks is best. Then you've got the function button, and the function button is used to control these 4 settings over here: red eye reduction, beeping, multiple exposures, and exposure bracketing. Then we have the self-timer button, which is right here, and film rewind. You set it to do the self-timer. For the film rewind, I believe you hold it down at the same time that you set this to the film rewind, and then it will manually rewind the film. Over here we have the LCD display, and then we have the control wheel here, which is typically, it's called the aperture and menu control wheel, and that's what it does. Controls the aperture and the menu, and in a few circumstances, also the shutter speed. We'll look at that in video too. And then you have the shutter release button right here. On the camera front, now one of the nice things about this interface, as you can see, is that basically everything that you need to use the camera is on top of it. Easy to get to, logically organized. Canon really does a good job of what they used to do a really good job. I like their film camera layouts a little bit, but their film cameras were laid out fairly well in terms of getting to everything quickly. I think some of their controls, and we'll see this in the second video, are a little confusing in terms of the way that they're laid out. At any rate, on the camera's front, we have the grip right here, and the batteries go inside of the grip, which we'll see when we get down to the camera's underside. So we've got the shutter grip. We've got this light right here is the autofocus assist light. So if you're trying to focus in dim light, that's what you use. Or, well, automatically. The camera will know whether it has enough light, and if it doesn't, that will turn on. We have the lens mount, which is right here. Here's the lens mounting flange, and as you can see, it's an entirely plastic lens mount. And the lens release button, which is what I just pushed over here to release the lens. It's on the side right there. On the camera's back, we've got the back release button, which is actually on the side. Just push it up and the back pops open. Got the actual camera back, which is this whole back plate. Then we've got the film type indicator window, and when you load your film in, it will show you what type of film you have through that window, which is why these modern cameras don't have memo holders anymore. Then we've got the AV control button right here, and the auto exposure lock button. And we'll get more into what those buttons do in video 2. On the camera's bottom, there's not a whole lot to see here, but what we've got are the tripod bushing and the battery housing. And so to open the battery, you just open the housing that way. It's pretty easy. And then it takes 2 CR123 batteries. Close that. On the inside of the camera, it looks basically like the camera insides we've seen before, but much, much more basic. And here we've got the film chamber, and there are 6 DX readers up there for your DX coated film. And if you don't have DX coated film, that's fine, because you can manually set the ISO, which is most of what the DX code readers need to tell the camera. And then this is the respool cam, and it automatically descends into the camera when needed. We've got the film guide pin and film guide rails, kind of film guide rails. Some rollers over here, the film take-up area, the shutter, and this is a vertical travel, vertical travel, not leaf shutter, I forget what it's called, but at any rate, it's a pretty darn fast shutter. And then over on the film door, or on the camera back rather, on the camera back we have the film indicator window right there, and it's surrounded by foam which prevents light from getting in and fogging the film. And then we've got a spring that keeps the cassette in place. This is the film pressure back right here. A roller on a spring that helps keep tension on the film in take-up, and then another guide to help keep the film in place when it's in take-up. One interesting thing about this camera and the Rebel 2000 after it is that it takes up all of the film first. So when you load the film, all the film advances, and then as you take pictures, it goes backwards through the film until you get to the beginning of the cassette. Now that's nice because once your shots are taken, they're then moved into the cassette, which is safe. So if you accidentally open up the film, or open up the film back with film in there, all you're doing is ruining photos that haven't been taken yet. And it also allows for faster loading and unloading, because while it's pre-winding all of the film, that's when you've loaded the film and you're putting it up to your eyes, and so it's, while you're unable to do anything else, it's advancing the film. And then once it's done, all you have to do is pop it open, and the film's already pre-rewound. It doesn't take 10 or 15 or 30 seconds to rewind the film. It's really a very clever way of doing things, although when putting the images in my negative storage sheets, it does really complicate my numbering system. At any rate, so like I said, it's entirely plastic and weighs 14 ounces with batteries. It does not have a pentaprism, which is one of the reasons. Now, let me clarify that. I read up on this, and there were things that said it had no pentaprism and things that said it did. My guess is it doesn't, because it's so lightweight, and so if it doesn't have a pentaprism, which I believe is the case, it would have a series of mirrors in here instead, and that would be part of why it's so light. Pentaprisms are really fairly heavy. They're a solid block of glass. Now, what does having a mirror arrangement instead of a pentaprism mean? It would mean that the viewfinder is slightly dimmer than with a pentaprism, and that there would be less contrast through the viewfinder than with the pentaprism. In terms of image quality, it doesn't affect that one bit. And it has an auto advance function, but it only advances at 1 frame per second. So a couple of final items on this before we wrap this video. Just remember, when using your camera, don't touch the shutter, because it's a good way to brick an otherwise perfect camera. Don't touch the mirror, because you risk desilvering it, which will affect your ability to focus through the viewfinder. Don't leave your camera or lenses in your car, because you can damage them from the heat or the cold. Don't store your gear in a sealed plastic bag, because if moisture gets in there, you'll get fungus. And don't let your camera get wet, whether you're at the lake or playing water polo or something like that. You don't want to get it wet. And just bear in mind that your camera is a precision tool, and as long as you handle it with care and respect, it's going to last you for a very long time. These cameras are really very well made. They just need us to take care of them as well. So stick around for the second video, and what we're going to do is take a look at some of these features like the mode dial wheel and the LCD, and we're going to talk about how to do the different settings and what the different settings do for taking pictures with this camera. So if this video was helpful, please give me a thumbs up, and you can subscribe to my channel to find out when I have more videos being released. Also, if you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the comments section. I appreciate those and try to respond fairly quickly. And lastly, if you have any ideas, please feel free to share those, and if I have the equipment and knowledge, I'd be more than happy to make that video for you. And one last thing, thank you guys for watching.